Hi, I'm Asif Faruque of FinExtra and we're joined today by Steve Haworth of TeleWare. So Steve, what does this new wave of regulation mean for financial organisations and how is TeleWare responding?
So regulations are expanding in the last 4 or 5 years, expanding quite dramatically in financial services, and that's changing the face of financial services in general. What we've found is that 5 years ago, 6 years ago, the financial services were looking at regulations within the UK and we were focused on those. We see additional regulations coming in from the US in the terms of Dodd-Frank, which actually is a more global piece rather than just purely US. And we're also seeing potentially future directives such as MiFID in Europe, which is then driving that through the European Union as well. So we're seeing this great globalisation of regulation, and it's just getting more onus for a lot of the banks. And what we're seeing, the implications of that for people is that it's starting not just to encompass a greater geography, but a greater number of technologies and a greater complexity. So where we've really looked at that is how can TeleWare help some of these financial institutions to resolve some of the issues. And one of the things we were looking at doing and have been helping since 2011 is really taking the mobile aspects of call compliance and solving that on behalf of our customers.
And how many people are really affected by this?
So the regulation covers the entire market. We did some research fairly recently that suggested 50% of organisations haven't implemented a solution for this. So that's quite a lot of organisations with some pretty significant exposure. And when we're talking about exposure, fines are just getting bigger and bigger. Obviously since 2007, then some of that's becoming politicised as well. We were looking at fines recently for some areas of up to $950 million, which is huge. It's not parking tickets we're talking about here. So getting yourself 100% compliant is the only way of dealing with this.
So do organisations have the right processes in place already, and what do you think they need to do to comply and stay profitable?
Well, I think compliance has been an issue for a long time. So there are a lot of robust procedures in place. But one of the differences with some of the more modern regulations is it's covering other technologies and other areas now. So we see mobile being covered a lot more. And what we're looking for in terms of mobile call compliance is, you know, business doesn't stop just because you leave your desk. And the consumers are expecting, customers are expecting us to be available a lot more of the day. So there's a real aspect of how do I stay productive. There's less than 20% of people that are desk-based for more than a great period of time. So it is a trend that is growing. And quite often, regardless of convenience and productivity benefits that you can get from this, sometimes it just isn't possible to be at your desk. So, for example, the snowstorms last year, the Olympics, bird flu, it could be any one of a number of things. I mean, you cannot be at your desk. So unless you're covering compliance and call compliance from the mobile side when people are out of the office, you aren't 100% compliant.
So how can financial institutions govern the new system and the data that comes with it?
Well, it's interesting you should mention the data, because actually compliance is just the start. The magic's in the data. So we've seen a lot of smart companies now looking at what insight they can drive from this data, what value they can get from this. A lot of the large system integrators are making a big a lot of noise around big data at the moment. In fact, a statistic from IBM was saying they got 4,300% productivity gains by value of insights from big data. And what we're seeing is a lot of this data that people are collecting now is walking out the door on mobile devices. So what we're trying to do is bring that back into the organisation and add that value and flavour back in. I know a book recently released discussing big data. The terminology they used was N equals all, the point being that if you're not capturing all data, you don't get all the value. And what we're trying to do is bring that value back in there. So what kind of stuff could you get from this information? I guess people would want to know. An example might be lots of calls going to Japan on a Friday night and suddenly the next day the stock market crashes. Wouldn't you like to know that the next time there was lots of traffic going there? And what were these people discussing the night before? Is there a way next time of of actually finding out before it happens, and that's when you can really try and drive value in your trading strategies.
Okay, so with all this new oncoming regulation, can you tell us about some of the implications there are for an institution's compliance department?
If regulation's getting tighter, which indeed it is, then the overhead for your compliance department is getting more stringent. And it comes at a time where we haven't got endless resources. So really where TeleWare brings to the party for the compliance department is that we'll own the problem, not just provide a solution. So we'll help people get there every step of the way, not just from a technology perspective, but we'll help advise, show best practice, and really take the burden of regulation off of them.
So what technologies can a firm use to comply, and how does the bring your own device scheme tie into all of this?
Well, I think when regulation only covered the fixed lines, so the handsets on the desk, then people saw that as relatively simple. Businesses chose that device, the device was going to be there for 10, 20 years. And so people have a way of dealing with that. As we've moved to the mobile side, then there's numbers of operating systems, many different handsets. And some of the earlier ways of solving the issue was to put an application on a device, which would typically then only be written for a device type or an operating system specific. And one of the key drivers to adoption of this technology is that you have a freedom of choice. You know, people who are going to use this are going to want to use the device that they're used to. They're going to want to use the device they've got today, but then they also want the freedom to be able to choose a different device tomorrow. Things are moving very fast in the mobile sector, and the beauty of a SIM-based solution is it will work with anything. It's robust, reliable. You change the SIM card and away you go.